we've never seen anything like this in the NBA. And, typically in the NBA, we see a couple guys injured, banged up at this point in the season. Historically, about 80 to 90% of stars will be playing. Right now, it's about 58%. That's astronomical. The injury rate has gone up, doubled since 2023 among star players. And just so you know, I'm using the NBA's official criteria here, which is if you've made the All-Star team or All-NBA in any of the previous 3 years, you're considered a star by the NBA's official designation in their player participation policy. So that's when I'm talking about stars missing so many games. That's the pool of players I'm talking about. It's LeBron, it's Luka, it's Wemby now, it's Jalen Williams, it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Basically, the biggest names in the sport are playing only half the games at this point. And we just saw Victor Wembanyama, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Ja Morant, Jalen Brunson, all now facing new injuries and might be sidelining them for weeks or more. This is a crisis for the NBA because the stars are what drive the league. It's what on a Tuesday night you tune into NBC to watch Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper, the number 2 overall pick, and they're all sitting. And of course, on the other side, Ja Morant is also sitting, and that relationship with fans, you want to be able to have that trust, right, guys? That when you see, hey, it's Spurs Memphis tonight, I can't wait to watch these guys, and then you turn on the TV and they're sitting, that has a dent in your relationship with your audience. And the more that happens, I think over time you start to lose some of that trust with the audience and the fans that, hey, I got to tune in tonight to watch these people. When nowadays it seems like over just a little bit over half of the NBA stars are sitting. So that is a huge problem for the league. And hopefully guys like LeBron James will be able to rescue them back from this crisis where I think fans are wondering, where are these guys?
I mean, you say the word crisis. I think that's fair. Leagues need stars. The NBA is no different. I don't think that's any sort of hot take. But Tom, I'll ask you maybe the $1 million question, the $50 million question, the hundreds of millions of dollars question. Why? Why are we experiencing injuries at such a high clip this season?
Yeah, 213 games lost due to injury to NBA stars already this season. We haven't even hit Thanksgiving.
Crazy.
And we've already gotten 200 plus games. 2 years ago, Caroline, that number was at 100. And that was even high. Okay. So typically we would see like 20, 50 games lost due to injury by stars back, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And now it's at over 200 at this point. So something's going on, right? And it's a big mystery around the league that medical professionals, trainers, athletic trainers, coaches, players, executives, they're all trying to solve this mystery of why does it seem like we can't keep these guys on the floor? And what most of the conversation starts to circle around is the pace of the play. Pace meaning how fast the game is now and the geometry of the game now, where Caroline, bigs, Jokic, Wemby, you name it, Alperen Şengün, these star bigs are now having to defensively guard out towards the three-point line. Pick and rolls are being started at half court now, whereas in Patrick Ewing and David Robinson, those days, you just go to the paint and you'd bang down low and you wouldn't have to cover so much ground now. So because of the pace of the play, that you're playing super fast up and down the floor, because teams with analytics have realized the best way to score is when you got numbers in transition. And so every team is trying to jump out in transition when they have a numbers advantage. And that over time has created a culture, coaching culture, playing culture of trying to run as fast as you can all the time. And not only that, the three-point shot has expanded the geometry of the game that bigs, Giannis, Miles Turner, they're trying to play 30 feet out defensively and guard all these actions. I don't know if you guys saw this highlight a couple days ago when Wemby is guarding Stephen Curry out on the three-point line and trailing, running miles around the floor trying to defend Steph Curry. I ask you, in what era before this one would you ever ask Manute Bol, George Miroslav, Yao Ming, Arvydas Sabonis to guard Isaiah Thomas, Jason Kidd, or any of the other star point guards that are running around the floor? We would never ask 7-footers to do this. And yet now in today's era, not only are you running in these track meets up and down the floor that OKC and Indiana established in the NBA Finals last year, but you're also asking some of these bigs to play like guards. And skill-wise, it's great. It's great theater. It's great TV to see a 7-footer play like a guard. But we have to ask ourselves, is the human body able to withstand this for 82 games? And that's why you hear Steve Kerr last night at Tuesday's game talk about how the pace of the play is just something that he doesn't think is sustainable for today's NBA. And he really hopes that everyone can come together to find a solution. And I think we all know what that solution might be. It's just whether all the stakeholders are willing to cut the games from the schedule, and that might mean a decrease in revenue. And that is the ultimate question here. It's all about money. And if the players are getting the money and the owners are seeing their franchise value skyrocket and the NBA is getting these monster TV deals, will anyone do anything about it if they are all really rich off of the game?
Tom, you mentioned Kerr's press conference last night, and I thought the most interesting thing he said was at the very end when he was asked, is there support in the room to actually eliminate games, which he obviously supports. And he made, I'm paraphrasing, a comment about, well, in modern corporate America, how many people want to go out and make less money? I don't think he's wrong about that, right? Like, so I hear you that this is an issue. And I hear you that pace of play is something that is absolutely destroying the health of these stars. I don't know that there's an actual solution to it, though. And that's what my mind can't wrap around, because I don't think I can't imagine a world where owners and players, because they get a cut of the revenue, are going to turn around and say, everybody, we're going to reduce regular season games by 20% so that things are easier on our bodies. And we're all going to take a pay cut to do it. Like that universe doesn't exist in my mind.
Well, I remember Daryl Morey once telling me, the president of basketball operations for the Philadelphia 76ers, who runs the MIT Sloan Analytics Conference. Like, they call him Dork Elvis for a reason. He thinks about these issues and looks at the numbers for a living, right? And he's always made the argument, Jason, that in what world is fewer games less money? If you look at the NFL, their whole thing is scarcity. It's like there's only 18 games, 17 games where you're waiting every week for your team's game, and that builds up intrigue. You build your entire weekly schedule, your monthly schedule around NFL and college football that only play one game a week. And that scarcity is what drives, I think, a lot of the attention. And the audience is very much locked in every week and builds. I build my Saturday around watching Wake Forest play UNC on a Saturday and bringing my family out to that. But in terms of the NBA schedule, how often are you building your schedule around with your family and your friends to catch the NBA game? And the reason why is because there's just so many games and they're on random nights throughout the schedule. And so I've always believed that there's something to what Daryl Morey is saying, is that less games doesn't always necessarily mean less revenue. Otherwise, the NFL wouldn't work, right? College basketball has half the number of games that the NBA does. And look at March Madness. It's the biggest moneymaker in basketball. And so it doesn't always equal, fewer games doesn't always equal less revenue. I do think that scarcity could help, is that if you only had 2 NBA games for your favorite team every week, I think, and you had that normalcy building around, just Tuesdays and Fridays or whatever it is, I think the NBA could actually see a bump in ratings and revenues if there was that kind of appointment viewing that college football and NFL has in their schedule. So I do think it's a little bit more nuanced than just like cut the schedule by 20%, lose 20% of the revenues. I do think that the NBA has a scarcity issue, that players playing on these back-to-backs, they're like, I know this is a big game, but my body's breaking down. I need the night off. And if you cut back-to-backs, you eliminate that excuse.
I think that's brilliant by you. I 1000% agree. Less could potentially mean more for the NBA. But I want to go back to the injuries for a second, because you look at some of the injury reports across the league. Okay, Wemby, calf. Dylan Harper, calf. Ja Morant, calf. Calf injuries everywhere, keeping some of these star players sidelined. It's kind of a chicken and egg situation. Are we just seeing more calf injuries in the NBA, or coming off the heels of horrific, choice of words by me, of last year with Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton and the Achilles injuries? And we've seen calf injuries can lead to Achilles. Are teams just now approaching calf injuries with an abundance of caution?
Yeah, I think so. Caroline, you hit it on the head. I think medically, yes, there is some sort of connection, it appears, between calf strains and Achilles tears. It's not always the case that a calf strain will lead to an Achilles tear. But when you have these high profile stars like Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, having these Achilles tears, and let's not forget, the most high profile Achilles tear that I've seen covering the league happened in 2019 with Kevin Durant coming back, early to come back from the calf strain because he wanted to play in the NBA Finals and rescue the Golden State Warriors, who were down in that series against Toronto, and his Achilles snapped in the NBA Finals, just like Tyrese Halliburton did. I think there is something to this, is that because of the high-profile Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, and Damian Lillard injuries, every medical staff is just paying extra attention to these calf strains. And I will say, soft tissue injuries typically are associated with overuse injuries where you're having to do these short bursts and your hamstrings, your groin, your calf, they're not able to withstand, without the proper recovery, all these quick bursts and quick jump outs and pushing off your toes to go make an accelerated movement. All of these hard movements require you to have full recovery of your muscles. And so I think this is an issue that the league has to figure out. Is we love open court basketball. We love three-pointers. We love high acrobatic plays at the rim. But if the bodies aren't willing, or if the bodies are being pushed beyond their limits to get to those things that we love, then we won't have the players to do those plays. Ja Morant is gone. Anthony Edwards, thankfully, has been relatively healthy. But all these things that we love about the NBA, we have to make sure that the style of the game and the rigors of the game allow the players to continue making these highlight plays.
So, Tom, I want you to educate me. I spent some time yesterday. I'm not going to pretend my phone book is anywhere near what yours is, but I took your article yesterday and I sent it to two former NBA players that I've worked with before that are recent NBA players, and two former NBA players that are in media, haven't played in a minute. I sent the information and I said, what's the cost from a player standpoint? All four of them gave me the same answer, independent of each other. They all said, too much basketball, not enough lifting. At some point, that was the crux I got from every one of the players, was not enough lifting, too much basketball. Why? What is broke? Because you mentioned trainers can't figure this out. Like, what is broken in the NBA training system where players feel like they just can't lift the way they used to lift to get the strength they need to get to be able to prevent these injuries?
Well, I'll hand it over to Steve Kerr, who's won championships as a player, as a coach, and as an executive. As he said, we haven't had a single practice this year. Just too many games. We have no time to train our bodies because there's so many games. Just give you an example. They've played tonight. They're going to play their fifth back-to-back of the season. And the Houston Rockets have 0 such games. And by the way, the Houston Rockets have had Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün healthy for all of their games this year. And meanwhile, Steve Kerr is just barely getting through these games, patching together Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Jimmy Butler. And Jonathan Kuminga, by the way, is injured too. Steve Kerr is like, we haven't had any time to train, to go over practice because there's so many games. So again, it all points back to medically, are we doing what's optimal for the player health in this league? And the answer, I think, from Steve Kerr's perspective, and Rich Celebrini, his the head of his medical science on the Golden State Warriors, they're all saying, like, I just don't know if today's game we could keep playing 82 games in 170 days like we used to. And people say, oh, they have these luxury hotels and they're flying private jets. Well, to play 80 possessions in a game, now it's at 110. Okay, so you're playing almost half as much, like 50% more basketball on a nightly basis than they used to. I just think that there's a lot of slack in the system that needs to be tightened up across the league.
Real quick, Caroline, I will say, Kerr did say last night also, 17 games in 29 days in 13 different cities. Just so everybody hears that, 17 games, 29 days, 13 cities is what they've dealt with. Go ahead.
For a team whose average age is like 50. It's unsustainable for anyone in the league, especially when you're dealing with a bunch of vets like the Golden State Warriors are. Talk about a lot of injuries. One guy we haven't mentioned is someone who's dealt with injuries a lot in recent years, and that's Anthony Davis. We learned that he will extend his period of rehab for the next 7 to 10 days, even more, 7 to 10 days. Is this indicative of an injury that AD is dealing with, or is this the Mavs' way of preserving AD's trade value?
I think it is the latter. You talk about preserving his trade value. I think if you see read the tea leaves here, the owner, Patrick Dumont, who just fired Nico Harrison, right, who was responsible for bringing Anthony Davis in. So he wants to disassociate from Nico Harrison, is now stepping in, and you're seeing headlines of owners having to get medical reports before they sign off on Anthony Davis playing. And to me, what this tells me is that Patrick Dumont already has fired Nico Harrison and maybe wants to get rid of, or essentially figure out a way to maintain Anthony Davis's trade value, maintain his health, and perhaps to try to move him in a trade and not risk an injury. And, like when you look at Anthony Davis, we did this for the big numbers show that I do every week at Yahoo Sports with Dan Devine. Last week's big number was 0, as in the number of games that Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis has finished together as a member of the Dallas Mavericks since the trade. They haven't played a single game start to finish together. And that is a huge reason why Nico Harrison was let go, is that they haven't even had an opportunity to see the vision that he put together, because he traded for Anthony Davis, one of the most injury-riddled players in the NBA. So this does have a lot of trade whispers around the league. Just it feels like the fingerprints of an owner that wants to move the star player, not have him get injured for multiple reasons. But Anthony Davis trading for that guy, this is the bed that Nico Harrison made, is when you trade a 25-year-old for a 32-year-old who's got all this injury history, you better be prepared for a lot of DNPs.